of love, the stakes are high. Not everyone can be a winner.
I don't know how to thank you.
A faithful parishioner develops a fatal devotion.
It felt like a cold slap in the face.
A brilliant student swaps her study plan for a murder plot.
There's a killer woman on the loose. It was a real-life soap opera.
She loves you already.
And a mother makes her home a house of horrors.
I don't know this man.
It was born out of the mind of a very disturbed woman.
These deadly women can't face losing at love. They kill the competition. Excitement fills a Lutheran church in Springfield Township, Pennsylvania. When a new pastor arrives in 2005, ex-golf pro Greg Shreves heats up the congregation.
Well, good morning, ladies. Please be seated. Now, as you all know, I'm leaving at the end of the month. So I'd like you all to join me in making Pastor Greg feel very welcome.
A lot of people at the church were taken with Pastor Shreves. He definitely had a personality. He was very engaging.
Well, I wasn't expecting that.
He was a tall, good-looking man who really became accepting of everyone in the community.
While Pastor Greg turns many heads,
Oh, Pastor Greg, it's so lovely to meet you.
no one is more excited than 65-year-old Mary Jane Fonder.
Hello, hello. I'm Mary Jane. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mary Jane.
A passionate parishioner with an eccentric love of ill-fitting wigs.
I help out at the church on Mondays and Tuesdays.
He is her new captive audience.
A lot of people would describe Mary Jane Fonder as the aunt you wouldn't want to sit next to at Thanksgiving dinner because she would just talk your ear off. Someone that, you know, would be looking to talk to anyone that would listen.
We will be working together very closely.
Poor guy. She's gonna talk his ear off.
I help fold the newsletters. I put up the bulletin board.
Mary Jane's mind was like an amusement park.
You name it, I do it. I'm General Dog's Body around here.
But nobody wanted to stay. They were all running out.
For Mary Jane, the church community is a comfort.
She certainly had difficulty in building any relationships with people. She knew no boundaries, which is why she gravitated to a church environment, because they would be more inclined to accept her for who she is.
But the new pastor's arrival has started something more thrilling.
Oh, Pastor Greg, you shouldn't be doing that.
Mary Jane, what are you doing here on a Wednesday?
I'm here for you, and I'm not going anywhere.
Mary Jane hadn't had a loving, intimate relationship for over 30 years. When she meets Pastor Greg, she falls head over heels.
Oh, it's quite okay, Mary Jane. I can manage on my own.
Mary Jane wants to push the boundaries of pastoral care.
If you'll excuse me.
As the weeks pass, Mary Jane becomes a constant presence in the good pastor's life.
We need to talk.
My door is always open.
You can't deny what's between us.
He was shocked, but in Mary Jane's mind, he loved her.
Mary Jane, there is no us.
Too soon.
You need to leave.
But Mary Jane's attention is getting a little creepy.
Eventually, Mary Jane took it upon herself to go in his home and leave food in his refrigerator.
Ah! What are you doing here?
Making sure you don't starve.
No, please. Go and never break into my house again.
He eventually had to tell her to stop.
Pastor Greg wants to deliver a clear message.
He wouldn't eat any of the food that she delivered, and nor would he give it away to anybody because he just didn't feel comfortable. That's how bad things started to get.
Mary Jane wasn't taking the hint, but she was getting angry.
How could you do this? Somebody's trying to take care of you, and you're snubbing them. So ungrateful.
And she's becoming dangerous.
Mary Jane Fonder gives everything to her church in rural Springfield Township, Pennsylvania.
She was in the church choir. She was proud of the fact that she was a member of that church.
Things get complicated when she falls in love with the new pastor. But his rejection isn't her only problem. Now, Mary Jane has competition.
She was somebody who clearly had issues in terms of jealousy.
New parishioner, 42-year-old Wanda Smith, is instantly more popular.
She was well accepted. She was funny. She connected with people. And from Mary Jane's point of view, she never felt accepted by the group. But she's watching them put their arms around Rhonda and welcome her. Bad.
Rhonda's new friends are here for her through thick and thin.
I can't work sometimes. Now I can't afford my medication.
It must be difficult.
Rhonda had confided in some of the church members and Pastor Shreves that she was not doing very well financially.
I'm so embarrassed.
Oh, don't be. We all understand.
The parishioners sort of took up a collection to help her, pay her bills and her rent and everything.
Pastor, No.
Everyone was glad to help.
Rhonda was so touched that her church friends had done this for her.
To Mary Jane, this is personal.
I don't know how to thank you.
She started confabulating this idea that the pastor was having a relationship with Rhonda Smith. There wasn't any truth in that. It was all in Mary Jane Fonder's imagination.
Rhonda is getting the attention Mary Jane craves.
How about working in the office for a few days?
Really?
The pastor had a conference to go to. He asked Rhonda if she would be willing to be the secretary while he was away.
Thank you.
She jumped at the opportunity.
No one knew except Pastor Greg. Until one day, Mary Jane calls the office and Rhonda answers.
Hello?
This is Rhonda Smith. How can I help you?
And it felt like a cold slap in the face.
On the morning of January 3rd, 2008, Mary Jane Fonda goes to church
Hello.
with a .38 caliber handgun.
She entered the building, went into the office where she knew that Rhonda Smith was working.
Please. No. Mary Jane. No.
The first bullet grazed the forehead of Rhonda. It was enough to knock her down and off her chair. Mary Jane Fonda calmly walked around the desk and shot the second bullet into Rhonda's left temple.
Unfounded jealousy and a loaded gun end the life of an innocent woman.
There was really nothing to be jealous of with Rhonda. She didn't wrong Mary Jane in any way.
When police go looking for clues, they discover a bizarre lead.
So you know what happened to Rhonda?
It's also tragic. I sent the family a card. I even took them an apple pie.
Is that so, ma'am?
Mm-hmm.
Do you own a gun?
Mary Jane apparently went to the local lake.
I did. I threw it in the lake years ago.
Later that day, the gun and box of ammo is found by the bank.
When was the last time you saw Rhonda?
I think it's a sign of a very disturbed mind. Too many whirling thoughts going around that she couldn't even heave a gun into the middle of a lake. Thank God.
The state police ballistics determined that that was the gun used in the murder of Rhonda Smith. And we immediately get an arrest warrant for Mary Jane Fonda.
Mary Jane, can you come with us, please?
In 2008, Mary Jane Fonda is convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison.
This type of crime is among the saddest I've ever seen because it involves a totally innocent victim and a disturbed killer.
Jealousy is a monster, but paranoia is a killer.
You know, the moral of the story is we don't know what goes on in other people's heads, and they could be distorting what the truth is.
But for the killer's mental problems, this murder never would have happened. Free sex before that was even a term, experimenting with drugs. She really lost her head. But that didn't stop her flair for the dramatic.
America in 1921 is starting to change, and 20-year-old Chicago law graduate Wanda Stopa is leading the way.
I'm so proud of you, Wanda.
The world had changed dramatically in just a few years. Women, they could vote, they were out in the workplace.
You worked so incredibly hard for that, didn't you?
Wanda was very, very bright. Many said brilliant. She was one of the first women in Illinois to pass the bar. Her parents were very proud of her.
I wanted to congratulate you in person.
Thank you.
Wanda beat all the boys. Your daughter, she's going places.
And she was beautiful, too. It seemed like she could have anything she wanted.
Come in.
Wanda Stauffer, I'm here about the yacht.
But Chicago's law firms aren't quite ready for Wanda.
At this time, The conventional wisdom in the legal community was that, sure, some women might be able to excel in legal studies.
Sir, I graduated the top of my class.
But they didn't have the emotional makeup for actual courtroom work.
Let me be frank, we don't hire women lawyers.
Well, if you could just give me a break.
She was better than any of the guys, but she couldn't get a job as a lawyer. Not surprisingly, Wanda became very disillusioned, and I think maybe a little bit angry.
With her career on the rocks, before she even sets sail, Wanda goes looking for a distraction.
A woman who had some minor position at the courthouse introduced her to the Bohemian community.
Wanda was a pretty much straight-laced person, very traditional, very conservative. And then she heard the siren call of the Bohemian lifestyle.
No rules, no regulations. Free sex before that was even a term. Lots of drinking, experimenting with drugs. It was all there.
She loved it. It opened her up in a way that she'd never expected. I mean, this was something completely out of her experience.
A world away from conservative lawyers, Wanda finds inspiration, acceptance, and love.
She met a man named Kenley Smith, who was 2 decades older than her. He was an ad executive, but on the side, he liked to hang out with the Bohemian community. He was intelligent, and he could talk about art, he could talk about literature. He was a guy on the make.
Wanda falls hard for bohemian life and her 37-year-old married lover.
The name of the Bohemian game is live every minute as if it's your last.
Did you mean it?
Mean what?
You love me?
No strings attached.
I love everyone.
Wanda didn't get the memo.
Wanda fell deeply, madly in love. She wanted him all to herself. And that's when the trouble started.
If you leave your wife.
Wanda sent love letters to Kenley almost daily, sometimes multiple times a day.
She really lost her head.
Kenley, too, is at wit's end.
Deal with her.
I'm trying.
Try harder.
His sexual dalliance is turning into a nightmare for him and his wife, Doodles.
Well, Kenley had no plan to leave Doodles. And Doodles certainly had no plan to dump him.
Suggest she goes on a trip.
Good idea.
Wanda's in over her head. He needed to get rid of her. So he decides to send her to New York. He told her he would pay for her expenses there. And at first he did, $150 a month, which in 1924 was a lot of money.
It was one of those times where a man underestimated a woman to his own detriment.
In 1924, 23-year-old top law graduate Wanda Stopa waits for her married lover to join her in New York City.
He left her high and dry. Not only had he gotten rid of her to New York, he pulled the plug out from her financially.
She was drunk and taking morphine as well, calls everyone's attention to herself and says,
I'm gonna kill her! I'm gonna shoot her because she won't give up the man that I love!
Wanda's behavior was so over the top, her guests thought it was a theatrical performance.
Take these to remember me!
And everyone explodes in laughter. This is hilarious. You go do that. Yes.
But this is no act. On the morning of April 24th, Wanda returns to Chicago and her lover's house.
She focused her attention on her lover's wife, whom she saw as the only obstacle to her happiness.
Kenley's wife, Doodles, sitting upright in bed. She's got the flu.
You're gonna divorce your husband so I can have him?
Of course not.
Well, how will I survive?
You're a woman of law. Go to work.
Her husband isn't here, but the intrusion alerts a 65-year-old handyman, Henry Manning.
Handyman gets himself in between the bed and Wanda, tries to play the peacekeeper.
Now let's let Doodles rest.
She doesn't even seem to see the man standing in front of her.
Please, put the gun down.
She fires, and Henry Manning drops dead. Doodles jumps up, dives out the window next to the bed.
She fires 2 more shots out the window at Doodles, trying to get her as she's running away. Poor Doodles is terrified.
She goes out the front door, looks around, doesn't see Doodles, and just kind of yells out to the skies,
I'll get you yet! And now I'm gonna go and get your husband!
Now, a good man is dead, and a lethal lover is on the run. Who will be her next victim?
A massive dragnet was set up in Chicago to locate and stop Wanda Stopa.
It was a real-life soap opera. News goes out on the radio that there's a killer woman on the loose. The newspapers love to put out special editions, and they were able to put out tens of thousands of copies quickly. Some men fantasized turning her into the police and being the hero. Some men seeing she was an attractive woman, and they fall in love.
Everyone wants Wanda. Hiding out in Detroit, she plans her next move.
Wanda wrote a letter to her mother, and she put it inside an envelope with a $100 bill, a government bond, and her life insurance policy, and wrote, "Dear Mother, dear Mother." She got a glass of water, stirred in some sugar, then put cyanide of potassium into the glass and drank it all down.
After she took the poison, she rang the clerk to send up a doctor. The race was on. The race was between the police getting to her and putting on the handcuffs, or the potassium cyanide she had swallowed, taking her life. She won the race.
Wanda's suicide sends Chicago into a spin.
Now she is the biggest celebrity in Chicago, by far.
The press made a big deal about this bohemian lifestyle, and they said that it was that lifestyle and those people and their dope that really took a nice girl and destroyed her.
But the real victim is a brave bystander, Henry Manning.
He was just trying to diffuse an emotional situation, and it got out of control.
And I imagine he thought that she wouldn't pull the trigger.
It's a tragedy made worse by the lost promise of Wanda Stopa. She should have made headlines in the justice system, but not as a perpetrator, as a prosecutor. The times were against her, and she was seduced by a timeless temptation.
Boy meets girl, girl loves boy, boy dumps girl. This is a murder motivated by revenge and jealousy. She had become the enemy. The last thing in the world she would have done is declare defeat.
For some women, catching the alpha male is a priority.
When Sabrina met Mark Walton, she found all of her dreams had come true.
This is amazing.
In Wimbledon, England, in 2011, pop star and music producer Mark Walton is quite a catch for 29-year-old Sabrina Couder.
Sabrina appeared to the outside world to be a rather glamorous, fashionable woman about town. He was a very successful music producer, so they were living a pretty high life at the time.
35-year-old Mark introduces Sabrina to a world of wealth, celebrities, and music.
Mark, is that you? Oh my gosh!
Oh, yes. I'd like you to meet Sabrina.
Hi, Mark and I go way back.
She won the lottery. A life of glitz and glamour. It's exactly what she wanted.
But with the alpha male comes competition. A long line of rivals vying for his attention.
Get away from him, you whore!
Stop it!
She would fly into jealous rages and become very possessive.
I can see what's going on.
What? I'm so sorry.
Another man might turn and run. But Mark cares deeply for Sabrina.
What's the matter with you?
I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe it's because I'm pregnant.
Her jealousy infects everything, even when she's carrying Mark's child.
What's wrong?
How can you live with yourself?
What?
I saw it all, Mark. The men you've been screwing.
You're crazy.
Sabrina began to accuse Mark Walton of sleeping with male prostitutes.
wild accusations turn into clandestine surveillance as Sabrina's mental state deteriorates.
She began taping him and videoing him, placing cameras in their room.
You're spying on me?
Yeah, and I'll catch you.
She's stalking her own boyfriend in his own house.
It was a volatile affair that they had because of Sabrina's sometimes aggressive and violent behavior.
Stop! You'll let yourself out there!
Eventually, it's all too much for Mark, and the pair split. But it's not long before Sabrina has the comfort of another man, 35-year-old Sam Meduni.
He's beautiful.
Sam has picked up behind Sabrina before, when other relationships failed.
Sam was her standby. She would go off and have different affairs with different men. She even would have children with another man.
He would wait for her to come back and they would just restart their relationship as it was before.
Sometimes she'd be gone for 2 years at a time.
I'll always be yours.
By 2016, Sabrina is raising 2 children to different fathers, neither of them Sam. She decides she needs some hired help. 20-year-old Sophie Leonette arrives from the French countryside with big dreams and high hopes.
She wanted to improve her English, she wanted to study, and she took a job as a nanny working for Sam and Sabrina.
Bonjour les enfants.
She adored the children. She was very happy when she first came over here.
She loves you already. I hope so.
The young nanny is an instant hit.
She worked hard for the family and was part of their unit.
Are you okay sleeping in their room? Sure.
It's cramped quarters and a small salary, but Sophie is determined to make it work.
This was Sophie's first job and her first time away from home. She wanted to show her parents and the world that she could do it.
Sophie frees up Sabrina for her new hobby, trolling the man she wants more than anything, Mark Walton.
After the split, Sabrina couldn't get Mark out of her head. She filed no less than 30 reports with the police.
She claimed that he had flown a helicopter over their house in sort of a surveillance operation.
Except he didn't have helicopters.
Abused my cat. Sexually.
Except she didn't own a cat.
You don't have a cat.
You're under his spell.
All of these allegations were, of course, untrue and outlandish.
Sabrina's paranoia searches for new targets.
Can Sophie take me to the park?
Sure.
And soon, its crosshairs land on her popular nanny.
Sabrina's psychoses got worse. Sophie was brought into her delusion about her ex, Mark.
I'm sure she's spying for him.
Are you?
Yeah.
Sophie was somehow in league with Mark Walton, was working with him in some sort of plot to undermine their family unit.
We've got to catch her.
Sabrina drew her sights on Sophie as being evil, like a shark can smell blood.
Wimbledon, London, 2016. A picture of domestic harmony is not what it seems.
I hope so.
Nobody really knew the full extent of what was going on behind closed doors.
Sabrina Couder and her husband Sam are convinced her ex-boyfriend, Mark Walton, has planted a spy in the form of their nanny, Sophie Leonette.
Sabrina started to make accusations towards Sophie, like theft of a diamond piece of jewelry that had gone missing.
Sophie is young, vulnerable,
Get on the floor.
and a long way from her native France.
People in that kind of a state don't necessarily see that they can just simply walk away.
She treated her like a slave, a captive slave. She stopped paying her, stopped feeding her, didn't take care of her in any way.
It was clear that Sabrina had a considerable degree of psychological control over Sophie.
Then, suspicions and false accusations become assaults.
It started off with passive control over her, but then it escalated into physical violence, screaming and shouting at her.
Tell me the truth. I'm telling you the truth. Don't protect her.
At this point, for Sabrina, Sophie had become the enemy.
There's only one way Sophie can leave, with a confession that she is working for Mark.
Admit it. You're having an affair with him.
And that he is drugging Sam.
I don't know this man.
Tell the truth.
I am.
She was subjected to hours and hours of interrogation and torture. She was beaten with some electrical cord. She was slapped. You could hear the sounds on the recordings.
They record the entire ordeal for 6 weeks.
There were 18 tapes in all, the last one being particularly harrowing.
Tell the truth.
Finally, a shattered Sophie tells them what they want to hear.
Yes. I drugged Sam.
She said yes, out of just wanting it to stop, out of needing some relief from this abuse.
I'm sorry.
It was purely out of despair and frustration. She just wanted this abuse to end.
Sabrina gets her confession, but Sophie doesn't get to go home.
When Sophie said those horrible words, "I did it," she sealed her own fate.
She had finally given them what they wanted, and now they were trying to kill her. They would pull her up and resuscitate her, only to plunge her head under the water again. They must have gotten some pleasure from this, because they did it repeatedly.
On September 19th, 2017, Sophie's nightmare finally ends. Sabrina has what she wants and leaves Sam to clean up.
Sam's choice of how to get rid of the body was not well thought out.
He was attempting to cover the smell of the body burning by cooking food.
Thinking that a few pieces of chicken is going to cover up the smell of a body. There's nothing like the distinctive smell of burning human flesh.
A neighbor raises the alarm.
What are you burning?
Just cooking a sheep.
The fireman could clearly see the hand of a young woman.
Bollocks, mate, that's a body.
That ain't no sheep.
Sam and Sabrina turn on each other, but their phones show exactly what happened.
It is shocking what Sabrina and Sam did to Sophie. Not just because of what they did, but the length of time over which they did it, and that they did it together.
Sabrina Kuder and Sam Maduni are convicted of murder and perverting the course of justice. They are sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 30 years.
Sophie confessed to things she didn't do to save her own life. But Sabrina never intended on letting Sophie live.
Sabrina couldn't let go of the man she wanted. She needed retribution, but the victim she chose could not have been more innocent.
Every murder case is a tragedy, but what's shocking is that in this day and age, someone who's 20 years old, who comes to a foreign country, was abused physically and mentally by two people that she should have been able to trust.
These deadly women have their rivals in their sights. Mary Jane Fonda's romantic fantasy ended in real-life homicide. Wanda Stopa traded law and order for crime and punishment. And Sabrina Kuder took an innocent life with a violent vendetta. All three stopped at nothing to win their man, even if they had to kill the competition.